Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, thank you so much for joining me today, or at the high recommendation of so many people. I've been following you on X for some amount of time, and it's amazing to hear your point of view. Absolutely, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I know we were supposed to connect earlier, but I'm glad that we're able to find some time. I live on one coast and you live on the other, so there's 4 hours difference. It's always
It's
complicated.
it's the way of living in North America. That's
Yeah,
the way it
exactly.
happens to be. Now you're a podcaster yourself, and that's the Food Professor. Great podcast. I'll leave a link in the description so everybody can go check it out. But you're also on X, and you're a prolific tweeter about all of these issues, especially when it concerns food. And again, links in the description down below. But let's get into the conversation here because I really want to talk about. I mean, I've been looking into this more and more. I mean, I talk about politics in Canada. I talk about what's happening, how the media is portraying the story of reality, and how different it is to what's happening on the ground. And what we're seeing, what I'm learning about, and the more I learn about it, this dairy lobby that we have in Canada, the crazier the story becomes. I mean, we're talking about a commodity, a food commodity in a country that is making and breaking trade deals with our oldest trading partner. If you saw it in the news back in January, the British government walked away from trade negotiations because we won't lift ridiculous tariffs on cheese that's coming into our country. Can you tell me a little bit,
Yeah.
like, what is the dairy lobby, and what's the stated goal of it, and where does it end up here in Canada?
Yeah, so first of all, we are talking about supply management, which is a system run by the dairy farmers. It is a policy that has been put in place for more than 50 years in Canada. There are hundreds of marketing boards in Canada, and there are different styles, and each board has some level of power and influence on the market. But the ones that are the most powerful are the ones under supply management, and supply management would impact poultry, eggs, and dairy in Canada. We often talk about dairy because dairy is basically 80% of all cash receipts within supply management. And I would say that probably dairy is the one sector where we see most of the significant problems from an economic perspective. Poultry and eggs, I must say, I think that both sectors actually do very well economically. And if you were to end supply management tomorrow, I think they would be fine because they're very competitive. Not so for dairy, and that's why dairy always comes up as an example of how power given to a group can go too far, really. And so supply management, there are three layers to supply management. One, you have a quota system. So in order to commercially produce milk in Canada, you need to own quotas, and there are about 9,500 dairy farmers in Canada. We used to have about 45,000.
Well,
So we're
before you get
down.
into what the quotas are, why the purpose of the quotas? So I hear supply management, and me coming from someone who's read a lot about the Austrian School of Economics, free market guy, I hear that term, supply management. It sounds like central authority, central planning. What does that
But
actually
but but it
mean?
but it is but it is. In fact, the intellectual engineer behind marketing boards we have today comes from the Canadian School of Economics, as you probably know, and the one economist that really pushed the model. Back in the 50s was Kenneth Galbraith, a Canadian who actually advised, I think, about five U.S. presidents. And of course, the U.S., they do have some boards, but it's nothing compared to supply management, really. So the inspiration came from that particular school and was implemented. And the reason why dairy is fascinated with that kind of model is because of its production cycle. You see, with dairy, you have cows, and cows will produce milk every day. If you do not have a market, it's tougher to actually, get farmers to continue to produce milk. If you're disorganized, if you're not efficient, if you're not market focused, In the United States, some states do have marketing boards. People don't know this, but some states do have, they don't have a federal system, but some states do have um, supply management, but it's not as restrictive. They don't have barriers that limits, for example, imports that we do in Canada. So if you want to import butter from the US, you have to pay a 320% tariff on that
It's a
butter. So
tax. It's a
yeah,
tax.
so
It's a tax with a fancy name.
so you got the quota system, and the quota system is based on what we consume. So you produce what you consume in Canada. That's basically how it works with the quota system. And provinces are responsible for managing the quota system. So you're in BC, so the British Columbia dairy farmers are responsible to calculate every year how much quota the province needs to produce what British Columbians need. Same here in Nova Scotia. The second layer are tariffs on imports. And the third, of course, is the Dairy Commission, which is a crown corporation in Ottawa. And its job is to calculate how much dairy farmers should get for their work producing milk. So every year they'll survey dairy farmers. We don't know who, but they'll survey farmers. That data is not available. They just present a very, very uh, uh, simple report every year. It's posted on their website, and they basically say this is how much dairy farmers will get this year per hectoliter, and that's their job. That Crown Corporation is owned by all Canadians. So there's lots of layers here, but the bottom line is that the policy that is put in place is to make sure that dairy farmers get a fair price for the work they do, and the work that they have to do is to produce the milk and butterfat Canadians eat and consume every single year.
So they get a fair price at the expense of the consumer. This is how it really looks at the end of the day.
Well,
We
I
pay
mean,
a lot more for these products.
How do you define fair? I mean, that's really the big question here. So how do you define fair? And that's really the problem with supply management, because supply management will foster mediocrity. Think about it. If you're sure to get a paycheck at the end of the month and that paycheck is the same for everyone, what are you going to do? You're either going to basically be content with the paycheck you get, or you'll manage your costs to get as much profits as possible. So there are two dairy sectors in Canada, in my view. There's east of Toronto and west of Toronto. East of Toronto, you have Eastern Ontario, Quebec, and where I am, right here in the Atlantic. Most of these farmers want a fair price. That's all they care
Right.
about. And farms in the east are much, much smaller. If you go west of Toronto, and I would include you guys in BC, the mentality is very different. It's more about volume. So they want to increase volume to build economies of scales and get more money for their work, more profits for their work. So they are two dairies. So the East is always pushing for the status quo. Well, the West is always saying, you know what? We need a change here. But in the East, you have Ontario and Quebec, and that's 80% of all dairy farmers in Canada. And that's why supply management is so political, because all the votes, okay, if you want to get political, you got to look at Quebec and Ontario, and that's where the power lies when it comes to dairy.
Well, especially, okay, right now, what's very political is prices. Prices are going through the roof, and people are concerned when they see things go to waste. And here's a clip that's been around on the internet all over the place. And if you've probably seen this, but for the viewers out there, maybe they haven't. This is a clip that went viral last year of a dairy farmer that just said, "Forget it, I'm going public over this."
When I go for my haircut, people say, "Wow, $7, Jerry, for a little bit of milk." I say, well, you have to go higher up, because we have no say anymore as a dairy farmer on our own farm, because they make us dump it. And no matter how we stand up, so this time I'm going public. I want the people to see the pain that us growers have of 365 days. As a little boy, we grew up on a dairy farm, came from Europe, work, and here we are. This is what's happening.
Can you explain that? Why would people be dumping milk, especially at a time where things are getting more and more expensive? People are spending way more money on milk and other food items. People are lining up in the new bread lines are the food banks here in Canada, and this is the world we live in now. Why are we at this point in time dumping milk?
Yeah, we've always done milk in Canada, but it's a taboo subject. This is the one topic dairy farmers do not want to talk about. They pretend it doesn't exist. There's no problem. There's no dumping because supply management is perfect. We produce what we need, right? Not exactly. Sometimes you don't plan properly, and sometimes the weather or something happens. You miscalculate some of the issues. Demand is just not there, and so boards do request farmers to dump once in a while. The difference between Canada and the U.S. is that most of the time the valve to dump is always inside the barn. So you can't really take pictures of milk lagoons like you would do in the US. It's so political. It's unbelievable. They just do not want to talk about it. We did some work with McGill University recently, and we actually quickly calculated, according to the data that is readily available, we believe that Canadian dairy farmers dump uh, anywhere between 700 million to a billion liters of milk per year. And you and I pay that for that milk, but they don't want to talk about it. So this person was well, basically posted a video on social media filming himself dumping milk. It was the first time in history it was ever done in Canada. And let me tell you, I spoke to a reporter this summer about him, about Jerry, and he got threatened on social media. He was called out as being a irresponsible dairy farmer. He doesn't know how to manage. He's incompetent, all by his peers, and he got some visitors as well. But he did something that was audacious, and that was telling the truth to the Canadian public. This is something that is common. While the dairy farmers of Ontario were saying to the Canadian public, this is an exception. It doesn't happen often, but it happens all the time.
Well, you're saying it happens all the time. Why haven't we found a way to manage the excess?
Well,
Like we could be making cheese products and all kinds of other products with this, even if it doesn't go out on the market as milk per se. There's other uses for milk, wouldn't there be?
Absolutely. This is the beauty of supply management. I'm not a big fan of supply management, but to me, supply management is underutilized as a policy. We actually, because of supply management, we could actually bring the level of waste to zero, unlike other countries. In the US, they dump all the time as well. They dump more than Canada, but we have supply management in Canada. We can actually create a strategic reserve for milk powder, for cheese. We actually already have a strategic reserve for butter. Did you know that? We have a
Oh, I
strategic
didn't know that.
reserve for butter in Canada, run by, you guessed it, the Canadian Dairy Commission, owned by you and I. So why not actually create a strategic reserve for powdered milk so we can export? So no, why? Because it's too complicated. The simple way to deal with excess is to dump and keep prices as high as possible.
You know, the first thing in my head was like Fort Knox with just butter blocks. I couldn't get that image out of my head, so I was laughing. But so we have the opportunity to do that, and we're not doing that. That's
No,
correct.
because they want to keep prices as high as possible. That's really the reason.
Now, this just is so reminiscent of what I've learned through history, the Great Depression. The reason why, a lot of reasons why the Great Depression lasted so long was because of government policy telling farmers to turn their crops over and bury them, slaughter animals and bury them just to keep the prices high. It prolonged the inevitable. If we get rid of these price controls, usually the market finds a way, and a lot of people don't want to believe that the market will find a way. But we've had other boards in Canada. So there was a wheat board in Alberta, and when that wheat board, it was eventually disbanded. Was there a huge crash? Have wheat
So
farmers had a really hard
well,
time
we
because
need
of
we
that?
need to be we need to be careful here. So the weed board in Winnipeg was a monopsony. Okay, so it's a single desk model. It's a bit different. There were no quotas. There was no quotas with the wheat board. So the wheat board regulated barley sales and wheat sales. So as a farmer in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC, and the Peace River region in BC, by law, you had no choice but to sell your wheat and barley to the wheat board. So you had a single desk model, one buyer, and that was the deal here. If you didn't sell to the wheat board, you went to prison. That's really, and I think 3 or 4 farmers did go to prison over the years, but it became a problem because the setup was 80 years old, and 80 years before the monopsony was dismantled back in 2012, I believe, farmers didn't have access to data, and farmers really just didn't know what was going on with markets. It needed the wheat board. So the wheat board really served the Canadian economy quite well until farmers started to get an education, started to get really smart about markets. They were able to time the market better than the wheat board itself, because the wheat board was a bit like the government. Good traders went to Chicago. Bad traders stayed in Winnipeg, and bad traders got bad prices for farmers. So that's what we did. We provided a report to the CDAO Institute, proving beyond reasonable doubt that the wheat board was a bad trading agency. It didn't provide good returns to farmers, and so more and more you saw farmers not wanting the wheat board. With dairy, good luck finding one dairy farmer who wants out. Nobody wants out. It's just the perfect system. They're incredibly protected, and they don't want to compete. They don't have to compete. It's beautiful.
It's not beautiful for the consumer. I mean, if you know any
No,
Canadian that's been outside of Canada, they'll tell you about how miraculously beautifully tasting milk and cheese are in other places around the around the
yeah.
country, or around the
Well, I mean,
planet.
there are positives to supply management. So first of all, and people need to know this. I mean, are consumers losing with supply management? I would think so, but there are pluses though. So one, you have access to a consistent supply of domestic milk. Let me tell you, if you end supply management tomorrow, good luck saving any farms in Canada. They're all going to be gone because they're not competitive. So tomorrow morning, you would basically drink uh, American milk, and you would consume mostly American cheese and dairy products. That's the reality here. So do we want that? Don't think so, because you see, dairy, the economic ecosystem around dairy is really important. They buy machinery, they have cash. I mean, these people have money, and that wealth stays in regions. And so you got to think about how to create wealth and occupy our massive territory as a large country, because really at some point you got to figure out ways to create jobs in rural Canada, and the dairy sector is actually good for that. Okay, these people are pretty wealthy, so you want to keep. Is the wealth artificially created? Of course it is. Quotas are worth $30 billion. It's all in books. It's not real, but the wealth actually is leveraging a rural economy. So there's that, and of course, our milk is safe and, frankly, of good quality. Is it the best of quality? I don't know, but it's a good quality. Now, the big problem with supply management is that we don't have good prices. The industrial price is the highest in the world. So if you're making cheese in Canada, you're going to pay for your milk a lot. But the biggest problem with supply management is innovation, I think. And let me give you a good example. Do you remember the baby formula shortage we had last year?
Yes, I do.
How many baby formula plants do we have in Canada, do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't even know the answer to that.
The answer is zero. Okay. The answer is zero. We actually import all of it. Now, why wouldn't we want to actually build a baby formula plant? It's because of
Especially
policy.
when we're dumping so much milk. I mean, that could go towards baby formula.
Exactly. Exactly. So why not build a plant, okay, vertically integrate, process our own milk to service the Canadian market? We're not doing that because we have a deal with the Americans not to do it, okay? And so what has happened in recent years was China, of all countries, they went through a baby formula crisis in 2008 with the melamine scandal during
Mhm.
the Olympics, if you remember, in 2008. And
I
so
remember Australia running into problems where Chinese people were gobbling up all their baby formula and
that
exporting it. Yeah.
yeah, and Australia took advantage of that opportunity, not Canada, because of supply. We're not thinking about these opportunities because we're so internally focused.
Well,
And
that's why
so
so when you said it's all about the Canadian market. Well, why can't we become an export market? If we were a big whitewash in milk,
if our
why
milk is
couldn't we
so
be
good,
selling
why
to
not
everybody?
share it with the rest of the world and make money? That's been my argument since day one. But here's the thing about the lack of focus on processing and innovation. China came to Canada to build a plant to manufacture baby formula for China with our milk in Kingston, Ontario. It's called Canada Royal Milk. And it's been in operation over the last, I would say, 6 months or so. That plant was subsidized by the Canadian government, by the Ontario government. It should have been Canadian, but no, it's Chinese and it's producing baby formula. It was supposed to be for China, but of course it went public and people said, we have a quota system for Canadians and we're exporting that milk to China. That's not going to work. So China, the company, Canada Royal, has decided to actually start selling baby formula in Canada. I think it started about a month ago.
Oh, well, that's good news then. At that
It
point,
is
anyway.
good news, but would Canadian families buy Chinese-made baby formula? I don't know. It's going to be up to them to decide because of the scandal. If you go to China, and I've been to China, I've taught in China as a Canadian, they're always going to ask, "Can you send back some baby formula because our baby formula in China is poisonous. It's really bad."
Well, if it was produced here, wouldn't have to be produced under Canadian
Yeah.
standards?
Clyde, I'm so sorry to interrupt. My battery is really low. Do you mind if I go get my plug?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, get
Yeah,
that, and
sorry,
I'll
we
do a
need to
cut. That's no
just
problem.
well, hold on a second, okay?
Yeah. Cool. All right, back into it. Got a charger plugged in now. Okay,
Yeah,
we're good.
I got plenty of time.
And we were talking about the baby formula for Chinese manufacturer in Canada. Now, wouldn't that have to be under the Canadian standards of how they would manufacture baby formula?
Oh, of course. Actually, the plant was actually inspected by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, so they have all the certification. It's just it's the perception, it's the optics,
Hmm.
really, that would probably bother. I actually did post the news on X, and you could see that people were reacting. They were mixed reactions to the news. I think
Hmm.
it's actually. I mean, I think we should have 2 or 3 more of these plants in Canada, to be honest. Because what happened, the reason why baby formula is so expensive is that we were at the mercy of American plants like Nestle and Abbott in Michigan. Both plants basically almost at the same time went through some food safety challenges, and that's why supplies were extremely low. And American plants will service the American market first.
Yeah,
how it works.
I don't
And
blame them. I mean,
so
we
Walmart,
should be doing that as well for
yeah,
our
so
own
Walmart
markets.
Canada or Costco Canada uh, basically begged suppliers in the U.S. to bring baby formula in Canada, but they had to pay the price, and that's why Health Canada really allowed baby formula temporarily from Europe to come into the market. They weren't allowed before because of that secret deal we have with the U.S. To give them the Canadian market, and that again, that's because of supply management. Because we're so infatuated with protecting our dairy sector, we're just trying to service certain markets, and the baby formula market was kind of of an afterthought for the dairy farmers. They just didn't care about that market at all because, well, we got U.S. partners. They're servicing the cane market. Why bother? I mean, that's been the mentality. Same for Fair Life, the brand owned by Coca-Cola. They actually had a lactose-free milk. I mean, it's a good concept. A lot of people are lactose intolerant, so why not make a lactose-free milk? So Fairlife, Coca-Cola, came to the market, built a plant in Peterborough, and started to sell Fairlife milk. And I'm sure there are some in BC. Fairlife milk is everywhere in Canada, but that product is American, made with Canadian milk. But we should have invented that product. We should have actually invested, and we should own that plant in Peterborough.
So one of the things that I've noticed, and because I'm trying to do research and figure out what's going on with this dairy lobby thing, so I look on YouTube, all the videos that come up, a lot of them are farmers that are defending it, and they'll give several arguments. One is the supply management helps keep farms alive because of the ebbs and flows of the marketplace over the course of the year. But then they also often bring up the dreaded American standard for milk. Do you want to have your deadly milk coming across the border that's going to get everybody
hormones.
sick? So my question is, how many people? What was there a rash of milk related injuries just before the dairy lobby became what it is? Like when did that become the main issue?
Well, so I teach in Florida every 2-3 years. We go to Florida. We stay there for many months, and I consume American milk, and it's actually pretty good. The butter, I think, is better than in Canada. To be honest, the butter in Canada we have is not very good at all. And we can talk about Buttergate if you like later. But I mean,
Okay.
generally speaking, the quality of dairy products in the U.S. is very good, and they often use that argument of BST. And BST is that growth hormone that is used. It's allowed in the U.S. and it's disallowed in Canada. So it's all true. But barely 2% of farmers in the US will use growth hormones, and it's not for the human chain at all. And so if you go to the grocery store in the US, you will not find dairy milk coming from cows that were fed growth hormones. It's a false argument. They're often using the argument saying, well, cane milk is superior. Well, do you have any evidence of that? There is no evidence of that.
Right. So the hormones aren't actually getting into the milk. I didn't know that. I
No.
just assumed that was
But here in
allowed.
Canada, though, we actually, we allow dairy farmers, to use palmite, which is a palm oil derivative, to feed cows. And of course, when you do that, the butter fat that is used to make butter in Canada makes butter harder. It doesn't really soften at room temperature as quickly as normal butter. A lot of Canadians have actually noticed 3 years ago, Buttergate erupted. It went viral around the world.
I've never heard of this. Can you explain it to me? So I know what ripped toast feels
Buttergate,
like, and I hate it.
We actually. So if you put your butter on your kitchen counter for 24 hours, 48 hours, okay, it will stay hard. If you buy just regular butter, it will stay hard compared to, say, grass-fed, which is not supply managed. And you'll see the difference. I encourage people to do both. Buy a grass-fed piece of butter, and normal butter, and you'll see the difference. One is harder than the other. Why? Because it doesn't have as much palmatic acid, palm oil, and palm oil is not on labels. And that's why we called it Buttergate, because all of a sudden people were realizing that there was basically just palm oil in their butter, which changes the texture of the butter itself.
It's funny because I actually use my butter as a thermostat for my house. I know if it's too cold, if it rips the bread. I mean, that's just the thing.
I mean,
Okay, now it's time
but
to turn
butter
the heat up.
destroys. I mean, sometimes your butter will destroy your bread, and
Yeah.
it's not normal. If you lived in Europe, and I lived in Europe and in other places, butter shouldn't be destroying your bread in the morning. It shouldn't.
Right. So this
Yeah.
palm oil is this bad to consume? Is this something that's not good for human
From a
consumption?
nutritional perspective, I don't know, but of course, people are concerned about the environmental footprint caused by palm oil. I mean, palm oil is the most used vegetable oil in the world, but it has a huge environmental baggage, destroying trees in Malaysia, for example. And a lot of people just don't want to eat palm oil because they don't want to support that industry. So as soon as when they realized that dairy farmers were using palmite, which is a derivative of that industry, people were not happy, and that's why Buttergate erupted, basically.
So it's not like other seed oils where there might be a high in omega 6s and causing inflammation or
Yeah.
anything like that. Is that
We did publish in one of the most prestigious food science journals in the world about Buttergate 2 years ago, and in that article, it explains everything how we actually saw Buttergate happen, and frankly, the bottom line between you and I is the lack of transparency and data within the dairy industry. They produce milk, they produce butterfat, but they do not care what happens next. They do not care about the quality of their product at retail. They don't test the quality of their product. So they decided, you know what? Let's use palmite because my cows can produce more butterfat, and that's where the money is in butterfat. People don't drink milk, but they eat more butter. So let's
right?
actually produce butterfat as much as possible. Let's actually sprinkle some palmite, make our cows happy, increase my paycheck, without testing the quality of the product at retail. And that's what Buttergate was all about, really.
So it's the opposite of what people have been warning about or opening up the U.S. market because they're instead
Well,
of hormones,
dairy
it's
farmers
this
are saying, well,
oil.
don't open up the market because they use growth hormones. Well, look in your own backyard because there are practices nobody knows about that actually could impact the quality of your own product. So there's a lot of hypocrisy here by
Yeah.
the dairy farmers, to be honest.
So here now we get into this other part of what the dairy lobby is all about is the political connections here. And this is the most famous case, and a lot of people will know about this one, perhaps don't know about other cases, but this was, back when the conservatives were looking for a leader. There was a very close race between Maxime Bernier and Andrew Scheer here, and
Yep.
famously, Andrew Scheer went along with the dairy lobby, and he got the job, while Maxime Bernier was, I think, essentially ousted from the party altogether.
Well, he lost the
And
leadership race by just a few votes, but more notably, Maxime Bernier lost his own riding against Andrew Scheer, and nobody knew who Andrew Scheer was in Beauce, in Quebec. No, I'm from Quebec. I can tell you, a lot of people just didn't know who Andrew Scheer was, and so basically, the dairy farmers of Canada, when I say they own Ottawa, they do own Ottawa. So that's why MPs are very careful saying anything about supply management. So in this particular case, what happened is that the dairy farmers of Canada decided that Maxime Bernier was the enemy because, and I've actually spoken to Maxime Bernier on a couple of occasions about his plan to abolish supply management. And I've always said it's great, you can abolish supply management, but if you don't have a plan after that, it's not going to fly. I mean, people want to know where they're going to get their milk, where they're going to get their butter. You just can't abolish $30 billion of quota and say, good luck, see you later. You just can't do that. And he never did it. And that's why he paid a dear price. And so what dairy farmers did during that leadership race was to make sure that they have enough members to vote against Maxime Bernier. And they actually thought from a mathematical perspective, that Andrew Scheer had a better chance to win the election. So they brought all their support to Andrew Scheer. He knew that, so that's why he drank that milk. And what's worse is that Maxime Bernier actually lost the leadership by a few votes, lost his riding for the leadership race, as you can imagine. But the next election, okay, when he ran for his seat in Beauce against, of course, the Conservative, because he was in the People's Party of
Right,
Canada,
his new party.
his new party, the dairy farmers actually found another candidate for the Conservative Party, and the name of the Conservative Party candidate was Maxime Bernier. Another Maxime Bernier. That's how
funny. That's comical, actually.
They're very well. You know how things are in the booth. People are confused. If you don't follow politics, I mean, you just show up and vote. He lost that vote. He lost that seat by, I think, by about 200 votes that year. Really,
No way.
and that's kind of the number of votes the other Maxime Bernier got that year. So they really undermine his agenda. And so to me, that's why I've always believed that Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, was chosen by the dairy farmers indirectly because they didn't want Maxime Bernier as leader. And my guess is that Maxime Bernier could have won the 2015 election or the election after that, but nobody will know now. But he did change. I mean, he's more extreme now. He's more of a libertarian than he is a progressive conservative. Under Harper, Maxime Bernier was much more moderate. Now he's more extreme. But I would say that really dairy farmers own Ottawa, and that's why you're never going to hear an MP, including the progressive conservatives or conservatives, say anything against supply management because they can't afford it.
So when people discuss the dairy lobby, I found that either they speak highly of it because they're profiting from it, or they're a member of it, or they believe that the dairy lobby is keeping Canadian farms alive, or they refer to them as a mafia. They call them the dairy mafia.
Yeah, but there's the people who say that they don't rely on research funds. They don't rely on the dairy ecosystem at all. They're completely detached. And the people calling that dairy sector a cartel or the mafia are probably consumers concerned, policymakers that know exactly what's going on. But you're not going to see a politician say that. You're not going to see academics, very rarely academics who are funded by the dairy farm. Most of them are funded by the dairy farmers will say anything about the system.
Right, and you're in a unique position because you're a professor at a university with tenure, so you're allowed to speak out and in your capacity and say. Have you ever had any issues?
Oh, absolutely. I've received. I mean, you can actually look at my social media, Facebook mainly, I would say, because in Quebec, Facebook is a big thing with industry, with dairy, and I've received threats many times. The Halifax Police Department has come to my house a couple of times, because I had to file a report. They've emailed my wife, my kids. They've actually basically worked on many files. They sent those files to Dalhousie University asking the president to fire me, and that happened about 5 times. The first time, Dalhousie didn't know what to do with it because they never actually dealt with something like this, but they did launch an investigation.
Right.
Based on the allegations. It was a 48-page report coming from Dairy Farmers of Canada, but so they created a committee of peers, and I think within 2 weeks the committee of peers said, "What is this? I mean, this is just insane," because it came from the Faculty of Agriculture. The Faculty of Agriculture receives $12 million of research money from the Dairy Board, so obviously they'll listen. But when it came to Central couldn't care less about the Dairy Board, and they saw all the claims against me, and they said that's a matter of an opinion. That's really not academic misconduct. So they basically decided to withdraw the case, and I was free. And the last 4 times they just didn't bother. They just sent a nice polite letter saying, "Listen, he's entitled to his opinion, blah blah blah." But the the reality is that they just don't like criticism, and image is the most important thing for them, and they know that I'm right. They know that I'm presenting facts that are hurting their image, and they don't like it, so they go after people like me, and they try to squash them as much as possible. So but now they don't go after just me, they go after Farm Credit Canada. That's the bank for the agri-food sector. They sponsor a lot of events. So they go to Farm Credit Canada and say, listen, run a nice event. Don't invite Charlebois as a speaker. They'll go to CFIN. They'll go to Ag Canada. They'll always do that. They'll try to lobby to keep me off stage as much as possible. And they've had some success. I mean, that's the bottom line. And because in agriculture in Canada, in agri-food in Canada, most conferences are designed so participants will hear what they want to hear, especially dairy farmers. So they'll say that they're up for debates, they love debates, but they don't want a debate. They want to suppress any opposing views in relation to the current policy.
So ever since I was a little kid, I'd go to school and they teach you the food groups, and this is it's so funny to look back. I mean, the famous food pyramid, which we all know is kind of upside down, but then also dairy is as a food group, and then of course brought to you by the dairy industry of Canada.
Yeah.
How did this happen? Like, how did we get so thrown for a loop on what our food is and all this? This was in the '80s when I was growing up.
Yeah. Well, things have changed actually since 2019. There is a new food guide, and there is no longer a food group called dairy products. And the drink of choice is no longer milk; it's actually water. So that
Right.
that was a big deal, and I thought, wow, in 2019, that was really a big move from Health Canada. But it's Health Canada, not Ag Canada. At Ag Canada, it's different. Okay, at Ag Canada, very careful, and so every institution revolving around Ag Canada will always check with dairy farmers to make sure they're okay. And people don't realize it, but many policies are influenced by the dairy farmers. You don't go against the dairy farmers at all. But Health Canada runs the food guide. It's their forte. So you had a bunch of nutritionists saying, well, the science actually is not encouraging us to drink more milk. The science is actually encouraging to drink less milk and eat fewer dairy products. And that's exactly what we got in 2019. Will it change behavior? I'd say probably over time, as the food guide becomes more institutionalized, I actually think that people will actually continue to drink less milk. But here's the thing about the quota system: dairy farmers don't care. All they do, so as I said at the very beginning, in 1972, when supply management was created, we had about 45,000 dairy farms in Canada. And the policy was put in place to save the family farm. Okay. Despite supply management, we lost as many farms as a percentage than the US. And they don't have supply management. So we're down to 9,500. And we could lose another, I'd say, 4,000 by 2030. And dairy farmers don't care. They don't care because quotas are rearranged. They're rearranged based on demand. And for example, if they need less milk or less butterfat, they just buy these quotas back and redistribute them, or they basically recalibrate the system. Nobody loses in the dairy sector, even if demand goes down. And that is fundamentally a huge problem because you are designing a policy to support a declining industry. Really, you're not stimulating demand. You're just accepting a dwindling demand for your commodity.
Well, that's interesting. Like it's very reminiscent of I think it was the turn of the century in Florida, Louisiana. They had sugarcane farmers. They wanted to be protected against what was now becoming a giant trade route that was coming in of sugarcane to North America from South America, and it was dirt cheap because it grows like a weed down in South America. It's super easy to farm that stuff. And they were able to convince the federal government to put tariffs on sugarcane and sugar products coming into America, and then they ended up going bust anyway. But the tariffs never went away. And then you end up later down the line, people aren't using sugar, they're using fructose in their products because it's cheaper and it's less healthy. And then you end up people getting, advocating for taxing soda pop. Like it really goes that far. Like why not get rid of some bad policy instead of piling on more bad policy to fix the original bad policy?
No, absolutely. And so there hasn't been any adjustments, even though they'll say that there's been some adjustment. We haven't seen any adjustments, and that's my biggest concern is that we in 20 years from now we'll have a very small dairy sector, and no one will care. And so eventually we're going to have to import more dairy products from elsewhere, even if we actually implemented what I think was a valuable policy, like in principle, but in actuality, boards, and I do want to exclude farmers here. So a lot of people are putting boards and farmers in the same boat. They're separate. You have dairy farmers and you have boards. Boards have become political beasts. Dairy farmers are as much of victims than cane consumers, because they don't know what's going on. Dairy boards will actually send out information, okay, that they think is enough for farmers to have. So they control information. That's why, like Buttergate, for example, boards knew they had a problem, but they never said it to farmers. So when they saw me on my Buttergate bandwagon, they thought, this guy's crazy. What is he talking about? We had all the tests. We tested hundreds of sticks of butter. We knew there was a problem, but they didn't know because they weren't told that there was a problem. So when you have dairy boards that have become political machines, you can't advance policy. You can't improve policy at all.
So where do we go from here? Like, if we wanted to save our industry, but like say we wanted to have our cake and eat cheese from Europe too, how can we have a market where we're not having trading partners walk away from the negotiation table because we have this silly economic system within our own country? How could we have that?
So we did publish, I think it was last year, 2 years ago, with the Universal Guelph Supply Management 2.0. So the one thing that I understand that I didn't probably understand 25 years ago is that you can't get rid of the quota system. You just can't. It's just too much baggage. It's because when I went to Europe and lived in Austria for 1 year, I studied the end of supply management in Europe, and their system was very different. A lot of farmers wanted out, and I understood why, because there were levies, there were conditions. In Canada, they don't have any of that. They got not like all they need to do is to produce their milk and make sure that they have a fair price, and it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. So what you want to do is to entice farmers to become more competitive. And how you do that, you get rid of those who don't want to. And instead of giving them billions of dollars in compensation, because you hear that a lot from the government, we're giving $2-3 billion in compensation because we signed a trade deal here. We signed a trade deal here. It's not compensation. It's just a gift. I mean, farmers will say because of COSMA, we're losing money. We're losing market share. If you ask a dairy farmer specifically, because of COSMA, how much money have you lost? They won't be able to answer your question. Why? Because the answer is zero. They recalibrate quotas. Okay, they recalibrate quotas, and politicians don't understand that. They recalibrate quotas, and nobody loses really. It's just the pool. It's a pool of quotas. That's it. nobody pays, nobody loses money. And so instead of sending out money and buy peace, basically buy farmers out, the ones that don't want to compete. Two, you create a new set of quotas for exports. Okay. The WTO did reject Canada's request to create a new class of quotas. I would actually go at it again and actually invite a new group of dairy farmers that have never been in dairy farming, entrepreneurs who want in. Right now, it's very difficult to get in if you're not born into the system. If you're not born in the system, you can't become a dairy farmer in Canada, or it's very hard. And so that's what I would do. And three, the Canadian Dairy Commission. My goodness, I would form that place. I would make it more transparent. The survey, I would make it transparent, telling Canadians how they calculate the fair price. And I would basically incentivize farmers to reduce the cost to produce milk as much as possible, gradually over 20 years. Tariffs, same thing. Over 20 years, you bring them down, not to zero, but to probably about 35%. And that's kind of what Australia did. And so did Korea as well, because they all had the same system as Canada. They
Oh,
got rid of the system, and we're the only one left now.
so we have real world scenarios where we can take lessons from and
Oh,
say
yeah,
it
absolutely. So
worked
there's
here.
Korea, the UK, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. Look at New Zealand, actually. So Fonterra became the marketing board for New Zealanders, basically. And so Fonterra is in charge to market New Zealand to the rest of the world. I mean, Fonterra exports for $20 billion worth of dairy products a year. 20 billion.
Holy
Okay.
cow!
So holy cow. Yeah, that's right. Holy
Yeah,
cow.
I didn't even
And
think of
and
them.
they're a country of 3.5 million people. So in
Yeah,
Canada, right now,
that's not a lot
we're
of people.
exporting $85 billion worth of ag commodities as Canadians, and we're 41 million people. So there are tremendous opportunities in the dairy sector in Canada. And what's frustrating and disappointing is that we've never taken advantage of these opportunities at all.
Well, and it's not even just like human consumption items. We could be selling. I'm sure there's like agricultural, animal consumption products that can be made with milk. Possibly, I'm not sure. I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
a dietitian. I'm
there's
not a
tons of
nutritionist.
things you can do with milk, powdered milk, and dairy farmers are always saying, "Oh, you can't export milk." Well, yes, you can. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't actually build a baby formula plant in Canada. Well, the China just did. I mean, we can't really develop a market for lactose-free milk. Well, Coca-Cola did it for us. I mean, you want more examples? I mean, when it comes to innovation, we're just not there, and we should be there. We innovate. If you talk to Agropur, Lactalis, Danone, big buyers of milk in Canada, I mean, they innovate, but just for Canada. I mean, it's just so it's really limited in terms of the kinds of products we get from our processors.
It really just sounds like a lack of will.
Uh, well, it's just they don't have to. They just they're not competing because they don't have to. That's really so you want to for supply management 2.0 to work, you're just forcing it. Let's we can't do this anymore. Let's protect ourselves, but also think strategically about the future.
Right. Well, that's it's amazing. It's amazing to learn all of this stuff. That this is all happening. Of course, you do a podcast. How often do you do your podcast? It's
Well, once a week. It's our season premiere, season number 5, starting this week. So our special guest will be Tony Chapman. He's actually he's the host of another very famous podcast called Chatter That Matters. So yeah, so look for it. And we have a sponsor called Cattle, but it's unfiltered, very topical issues we talk about. This is the one thing I'm keen. Nobody tells me what to say ever. It's just I can't. I have if I have something on my mind, I say it. And so that's been my motto since day one.
Well, that's refreshing because well, we all know when the news media is telling us something, they have
Well,
people
and
pulling the
thank you
strings
for your
and.
for your podcast. Also, I think it's important that people and I don't know if I don't know if you're seeing in your numbers, but our numbers are way up in the last couple of years. You can feel that people are moving away from mass media. They're just looking for different kinds of information. They want to be informed, and so why listen to a bunch of channel, read different papers, read the same stories written differently? Why do that instead of just go out, find new podcasts to actually learn stuff?
Well, that's it, and it's a big new industry of people just speaking their mind because they're not really tied down or brought to you by
Yeah,
whatever, right? And
exactly,
that's the whole idea. Brought to you by the audience of people that actually want to hear these conversations. So, thank you so much for
exactly.
joining me today, and of course, links will always be in the description down below. So go check it out. Go check out the podcast, and of course, give Dr. Charlebois a follow over on X if you're a user. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Take care, Clive. Bye bye.